Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, welcome to the Win with Dice podcast. It's a podcast all about tabletop RPGs. Calvin and I like to take a casual approach to the hobby, so on this podcast we talk about all the games that we run and the games that we play and the cool, wonderful people we get to experience the hobby with. If you're new to tabletop RPGs, go find yourself a table. It's really, really fun. And if you are a player in someone's game, maybe think about jumping behind the GM screen, giving your GM a break, and it's really not so bad back here. It's actually super fun and rewarding.
Yeah, it's really warm back here. So this week, we're going to catch up with the Unintended Consequences campaign that just reached its finale. That's been run by our good friend Tim, who we've had on the show a few times. And we're also going to cover some updates to the Grand Saga system that Ramon has been working on. And of course, if you want to check out this homebrew system, it will be linked below for you to check out.
Yeah. No tip of the week. I'm just going to take this time to talk about some major changes.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks.
I'll find somewhere to stick the theme song in.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into some of these Grand Saga updates.
Okay, cool. So, the Grand Saga system, I kind of wanted to do like a major update. Honestly, I think that in the effort of trying to be different from other tabletop RPGs, I think I missed the ball a little bit. We've done some play testing, and Calvin has I've obviously played the game, and so has our friends. But initially, the idea would be like you have a stat and you roll underneath it, which is pretty good. But having a conversation, I always felt like something was kind of missing. And after having a conversation with my wife, it was like, the time when you roll a die, and or like an attack or something like that, and the pause while the GM, and you look at the GM, and that kind of suspense is missing, because you just know exactly if you hit or miss like immediately, right? There's no interaction between like the GM and the player, if the player just knows if they hit or not, right? And the player tells the GM. So I think that's a critical thing, right? Like I think that's part of the game, the part of the game that I love, as well as the idea that if everything's on the player's side, then the GM actually has less control of the game, because you can't fudge dice, or you can't just call it or whatever, right? Because that's a part of the game too. The part of the game is to, if things are going kind of south, change things a little bit. But in this way, you can't, because the player either hits or misses or whatever, right? So I think I'm kind of going back to a formula of there's like a stat for the monsters and the stat for the players, and you compare results. So right now it's gonna be like a D12 plus your stat, like every other, or like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. But the GM also rolls a D12 plus like the monster stat in the relevant like reaction, as well as now just to kind of make that formula a little bit more unique, and getting back to the roots of, I want this game to feel more like you're playing like a really fast-paced kind of fighting game, because that's kind of one of the core aspects of Grand Saga. I wanted to have that interaction where it's like you're actually in like a little bit of a duel, where like someone tries to attack you and you have choices on how you want to defend yourself, right? So now, when someone launches an attack, you get the choice of guarding, of dodging, or counterattacking. If you choose to guard, the attack automatically hits, because you're just trying to block, but you get to reduce damage by like by like your resilience or guard. Resilience if you're a player, guard if you're an NPC. I'm not sure if I want to make those terms the same yet, but by like a D6. And the damage in Grand Saga is a D6 anyway, so even if you choose to block, the person gets to apply their attack's effects to you, but you're able to reduce the damage. So if you dodge, it means that you immediately, so you use your agility or your dodge if you're an NPC, and if your stat is higher, or your roll is higher, then you just dodge. So you avoid the attack, and you get to use a stride, which is like a move equivalent in Grand Saga. So you're able to just immediately, like you actually dodge by moving out of the way. kind of deal. So everyone should be constantly moving around the map. I found that like when we were playing the game, it kind of just basically becomes like a big mosh pit, which that's typical in like those tabletop RPGs like Pathfinder, D&D, where like you have the melee characters getting into it and you know like but everybody just stops moving and just like stands there and just keeps hitting each other, right? But now if you choose to dodge, you have the option to just get out of there if you wanted to. And the lastly is counterattack. So counterattack, when you choose to launch an attack against your opponent, you have to have a counterattack ability for you to launch a counterattack. But basically it's like the player rolls and they choose their skill that they're attacking, like if the player is the attacker, and then the NPC has an attack stat, and then you roll their attack stat versus. And if the defender is higher, their counterattack succeeds, which means you avoid, you know, the PC's attack, and the NPC does their counterattack. If the counterattack fails, which means that, you know, the attacker actually successfully hits you, they just get another maneuver. They just get another action essentially. So it's kind of like, you know, they're pressing an advantage because you chose to take a risk.
Okay.
Yeah. So I honestly, I think I'm kind of inspired by like the Pathfinder dueling mechanics, because I was like, I really, really like them. Like I like the idea of just like having more choices than like I hit or miss, or like on the defense, right? It's like, oh, my AC is high, so you miss. And it kind of encapsulates like the idea of like characters being unique, because maybe one character is just really good at absorbing damage, like actually just being a tank because like their HP is high and their guard is high, right? Or someone who's just actually elusive, so like their dodge is really high, or somebody who's like so skilled that they counterattack everything, right?
So is there going to be something in the attacks themselves that would encourage people to do something different, maybe? Because I can see people who would just rely on...
because now some attacks are unguardable, like, you know, unblockable or uncounterable. Like attacks explicitly say like this is unavoidable, right? Or like this is uncounterable, this is unreactable, this is undodgeable, that kind of deal. Mm-hmm. Usually there are special moves, so you can only use one of them and you have to use your special gauge or something like that, or enemies will just have that kind of thing. But also status, like there's conditions as well, like someone's off balance, so you know they can only guard, they can't dodge, or someone is knocked down so they can't dodge, or when they dodge it's less, you don't just be able to move properly, stuff like that, right? So attacks will apply conditions to combatants, and then that will limit their ability to do their defensive maneuvers essentially, or like their defensive choices, which could lead to, you know, people just actually not being able to guard or dodge or counter, which I think is a lot of like states you have to be in, or it takes a lot of work to get somebody to be in that state. It would take like teamwork to do it, and you're only doing it to one person. So I think that's pretty cool, and hopefully the players are able to do that to the NPCs. I have to make the changes and make sure that, like, you know, it probably would be better if, you know, I mean, I like the idea that the players have to gang up on somebody and the person's so overwhelmed that they just have to eat everything, right? Yeah. I think that feeling is missing a little bit, because I know that a lot of you know, you have like flanking. I think in D&D it's just the advantage, right? Pathfinder, like your AC gets lower, that kind of stuff. But I just like the idea that, you know, you're just being so overwhelmed that this thing gets wrecked. Which again, I know the core tenet too is that I want Grand Saga to be like a faster game, so you could just have more combats instead of it being like a long drawn out thing. There.
Okay. Yeah. I can see. I was just thinking about like, because like I recall when you were starting like designing this, that you would wanted to give the GM more room, like just take a little less off of their plate, have it put more into the players to just calculate certain things. But I can see. I think now you're just more letting like players have different options, I guess, in response to certain actions.
Yeah, because the design space is also limiting. I mean, this having 3 options to defend yourself like opens up the design space way even more, and like makes like the uniqueness of combat. Because like, how do you represent, like the idea of like representing somebody with like a dodgy rogue or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. You know, and the idea of like oh, I'm gonna weave and then I'm gonna strike or something like that, right? Like emulating that in the game is like better. I don't know. It's because like I don't know in like Pathfinder or D&D. It's like how do you like if someone has like a 17 or 20 AC, that's just like armor versus like dexterity or whatever, right? They're still kind of dealt with the same. I mean, narratively, I mean, you tell what the character does, but I think that's cool. My idea is to make that a mechanical thing, a mechanical choice of your person trying to either choosing to dodge or strike or block or something like that, right?
Okay. Yeah, I can see where you're going from with that. I mean, I would need to like actually play it to see if it has the right feel, but I get where you're going with that idea.
Yeah. And that also kind of comes into the play of like what is a critical hit. I still want those things in. So critical hits now are like, because all the damage dice is a d6. You can't critical hit if you're not going to do damage. So when you roll a d6, if like anytime when you're rolling damage, because if you roll a 6, that counts as a critical hit on any of the damage die that you roll. And you get a critical effect. You don't like just double damage. Your critical effect might be double damage or whatever if it comes to that, but mostly it's probably going to be like add a status effect or something like that, or do something extra like get a follow-up attack or something like that.
Okay, and is that going to be dependent on the ability that's used to attack, or?
Yeah. So you would like you as a player character or the NPCs in the NPC stat block, you'll have a critical hit ability that applies to a specific critical hit, type of critical hit, like a weapon strike critical hit, right? Then you get to do like I think there's one for the fencer that's like sword play. You just roll a d6 and then you apply like a status effect, like you break their guard so they can't block anymore, or like they're tripped so they're knocked down or something like that because you're so good at stabbing this person or whatever, right? Yeah.
Okay. I have others I'm curious about, but I don't want to like, because we do have a couple of pretty chunky sessions to cover. But yeah, I think that's interesting. Is that ready for people to take a look at if they want to play test it?
Maybe by the time this is released. I'm working on it like as we speak, I guess after like before I was recording this, and probably after I'm done recording it, but probably fully within maybe like by the next podcast episode it'll be fully ready. So we'll make an announcement or something if it's good to check out. But I am still working on the same document, so it's there but it's just probably not updated all the way yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say you should probably keep like different drafts of the document at different stages, but I don't know if yeah. That's not the way I work.
I know.
All right. So yeah, that's just more information on the Grand Saga game. If you want to know more about it, we've got a whole bunch of videos on the channel where we talk about what Ramon has been working on.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of outdated, but you can see the progression of game design I've been going through.
Yeah, I think it's cool to see that thought process. All right, so let's get into the Unintended Consequences campaign. As we said, this is a Pathfinder 2e campaign that our friend Tim has been running for us for quite a while now. And we recently entered the finale of this campaign, or at least this arc of this part of the campaign. There's going to be a campaign 3 that we are all looking forward to. The characters in this game being Teeks, a changeling druid, Silrona, a human wizard cowboy, Bren, a human ranger / monk, Kavo, half orc barbarian, and Finn, a human magus. Or so we think.
Maybe. I don't really know what Finn is, but yeah.
So we are a couple sessions behind on recap stuff. When we last talked about the game, we had come across one of our most dangerous enemies, High Hat Harry, who is a dimension-traveling hobgoblin with a stack of hats, each representing a different dimension he's able to jump into and travel through, who was a rival of Silrona, as sort of a sheriff in pursuit of a dastardly bandit sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely one of those Western where the good cowboy chases the bad outlaw.
Exactly.
across time and space.
A few sessions ago, Hi-Hat Harry had actually managed to kill one of the members of the party, Thalum, one of the OG members of the adventuring group. And when we had seen him, it seemed like he had run into some trouble because of his actions throwing off the plans of our actual big bad evil guy, the one who was manipulating all of our previous consequences against us, this character by the name of Wyvern, who was an orc that we had met many sessions ago. And after destroying his orc tribe family, we thought he was seeking vengeance against us. It turns out there was even more to it than that. But we will get to that part. But Hi-Hat Harry had shown up. It seemed he had been punished by Wyvern for killing Thalum. So he wasn't in the best condition. And that's when we jumped him and we kicked his ass. And we managed to kill him. And that was the end of the last session we discussed on the podcast. To make a long story short. And at that point, we set off from the coast because we still were trying to track down Wyvern, and we suspected that he would be where Teaks's mother is because he was going after our families. And Teaks's mother, being a sea hag, was on this secluded hidden island that we had found some time ago, using a map from Teaks's father. So we set off towards this island, and at the end of the last session, we ended up stopping at another smaller island that was sort of on the way there. This one had a big old lighthouse in the middle of it, a large tower with a blazing flame at the top, and we recalled having heard story that there was some sort of suspicious lighthouse out in the middle of the ocean that someone had previously run into, and it seemed this fit the description very well. We had a brief run-in with Sister Gurrell, a member of the Harpers, a secret organization that sort of tasks itself with keeping the citizens safe and dealing with any sort of corruption in power. And one of their agents had reported something about a strange lighthouse before disappearing. So, we start the session with docking and wanting to, I guess, investigate that lighthouse. Silrona, unfortunate for us, but fortunate for where he ended up, he did magically disappear, which is a common thing he does when Ramon is not able to make it to a session. So Silrona had his own adventure in the cowboy dimension. But the rest of us were able to head towards the lighthouse and just do some quick investigating on it, trying to see if there's any strange magic around. But Kavo took the initiative and knocked on the door, which opened almost instantly. And there we saw a servant, a suspicious-looking servant guy, who sort of looked over us as we made our way to this house. Finn couldn't pick up anything odd about them, but we could hear some noise coming from inside. At which point, the servant mentioned that the master is having a party, which seemed like good timing for us, I suppose. But also, we were a bit on edge because we just ran into some vampires not too long ago. So we were let in. We ran into another maid who was rather excited to see us, saying, we have guests, but I didn't see you arrive. The other servant who had opened the door mentioned that we had arrived by boat. So these two servants led us further into the building, and it seemed like it wasn't entirely just a lighthouse, but an actual manor of sorts. And inside we could hear the sound of music and dancing, and we were led into a large ballroom that was full of many unique and strange-looking individuals, all at many tables, and they were all sort of dancing and listening to this music together and singing together. Some dancing on the tables, and some just enjoying themselves. At which point we were informed that the master would be there shortly because the main event was about to begin.
Okay.
So yeah, we took stock of like all the people that were here, and they all, in the game, they all had like a bunch of different tokens and stuff. And they were all sorts of different kinds of people. There were some dragon cultists, similar to ones we had met before, but in different attire. There were some people in attire of like royalty or positions of power. There's like a strong-looking orc at another table. Some guests took note of us. Others were just happy to. Some were happy to just like see more people there. Some looked a bit suspicious of us. But at this point, this is when the host showed up. I'm wondering how many people are picking up on what this is sort of in a reference to. But the music stopped. There was like this bit of an electrical hum, and then the host showed up. Like this cloaked individual arrived to applause and fanfare, saying that they were glad to have everyone here to show off all their latest endeavors, and they trusted that everyone would be delightfully surprised. And as this person was walking around, Teeks and Finn were able to notice that this was not a normal human being, but someone from an alternate plane. This person, who introduced himself as Francine Kraus, walked by our table, putting a hand on Kavo as she walked by, saying that she could see him shivering in anticipation, with a very specific inflection. Okay. So yeah, this person who we learned was not only like a scientist or researcher of some sort, but also some form of succubus, perhaps. They eventually led all their guests into what seemed like an elevator, essentially. And going up that elevator, we were led into a larger chamber that held a lab of sorts in the middle, with platforms on the left and right of the room where people could go up and observe the space on these raised platforms. And they showed off their newest experiment as they showed off their newest experiment. The servant that let us in, this handyman, and the maid that had joined him, they were sort of using different parts of machinery, causing all these sparks to fly, and a groan could be heard from under a tarp on a table in the middle of the lab. And that groan was sort of intensifying as Francine was describing what was under there, and talking to the rest of the guests, saying that if they were to hire, guards or assassins or anything like that, instead of training and spending effort on shaping the right individual, they've instead discovered the secrets of life itself, and they can create the perfect being for their needs, for the right price, of course.
I see where this is going.
Yes, they can indeed make you a man. So, as the experiment went on, Francine threw off the tarp, revealing a large humanoid creature, saying that this flesh golem will do anything you require. And the creature sort of just woke up and was observing itself. Finn was able to note that it was made of different parts of dead things that were sort of brought together to create new life. And Teeks was wondering if we could bring this creature to use in the fight against Wyvern, because we probably needed all the backup we could find.
True.
And Francine was continuing to describe this thing, giving it like this block of wood to break with its bare hands, saying that it took 7 days to create, and another 7 to become a real man. Because we can see how buff and strong it is, I guess.
Nice.
But interrupting this presentation, there was another set of doorways to the north of the lab, and bursting out of one of them, a person came running out, looking wild and haggard and just wandering randomly. We could see scars on their head from up on the observation deck, and Francine called out to this person with the name of Freddy. Freddy also matching the same name as the missing Harper agent that Sister Gurel had told us about.
Oh.
So it seemed like Freddy was just trying to escape this space, but Francine was able to catch up with him and just plunge a surgical tool into his back, which instantly killed him. Francine quickly calmed down the crowd and just simply referred to Freddy as leftover medical waste. As then at that point, one of the members of Francine's staff, this assistant slash dancer, was who Freddy had been like running directly towards. She was left just like crying over the body for reasons we didn't understand at the moment. Francine herself said that she had to test the creation that she made and had walked away with it into what looked like a lavish bedroom behind a curtain. Teeks was very unaware of what that sort of testing could mean. But we were more curious about Freddy, and as we walked over, we also met the dancer who was the one that was crying over him, and we were trying to figure out if she knew, like, if Freddy was an agent of sorts and knew, what he actually did, and tried to get her to leave with us, but she said that she had nowhere to go and that she wanted to stay with Freddy. And we didn't really have much more time to try to convince her to leave before the handyman led us away and back into the elevator. So at this point, we all got the sense this house is pretty damn weird. We went to investigate some of the other guests. We did find out that one of the guests was actually just 3 goblins stacked together in a dress. Who...
Nice.
They took notice of Teeks when she was trying to spy on them, trying to disguise herself as a cat. Unfortunately, Teeks was unable to get away, so we did end up having a bit of a scuffle with those goblins. But we were able to knock them out pretty easily and then just hide them, like right before the maid and the handyman reappeared.
Nice.
And the handyman just said that we could stay and led us to our own separate rooms. Like, we could stay overnight, basically, because the ship did need some fixing, and it seemed best to stay here for the time being. So yeah, we popped back outside, we checked in on the rest of the boat crew who were working on, like, repairing the ship, made sure they were okay, and then we stayed overnight in this super weird house. Later, like, in our own separate rooms, Kavo, he could hear Teeks outside, and she said that she was scared by something. So, I keep bouncing on the pronunciations. I don't remember if it's Kavo or Kavo.
I don't know. I feel like Corey calls him Kavo, but everyone calls him Kavo, and I guess he does have like tusks, so who knows how it actually sounds like.
All right, let's go with Kavo, I guess, because it has cave in it. So Kavo let her in, and he thought it was Teeks, and Teeks entered the room and hugged him. But as it turned out, as this fake Teeks leaned up to try to kiss him, it was actually Francine in disguise.
Whoa.
And she attempted to use her succubus passionate kiss on Kavo. But Kavo did roll a critical save against the controlling effect, so he was able to just shove her away and made a noise to alert the others. Francine claimed she was just there to have some fun, but she was able to escape just before Teeks and everyone else showed up. At this point, we decide to just go looking for Francine. We head back to the lab, but only the flesh golem itself is there. We were able to pick up on some necromantic magic just coming from the area, including some of the equipment used to preserve actual body parts. We found the room that Freddy was being kept in and found how he was able to escape by making like a lockpick out of bed springs, which is pretty impressive.
Cool.
We were trying to figure out what we could do with this creature or with Francine, if we could get her out of there. But before we could, the handyman showed up, saying that another guest had arrived. And he led us back to the elevator and up to the dining room, where we found Francine in there, as well as Sister Gurel.
What?
It seems that Sister Gurel had been brought in here as well, somehow.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I think before I said the dancer's name was Francine. That was the name of the doctor that we had been dealing with. The dancer, I don't think we got her name.
Right.
But we did see that Sister Gurel was in here, seemingly captured by Francine. Or at least so we thought, because at first it seemed like she was there willingly. She was in fact surprised to see Teeks and everyone else there. And Teeks tried to mention Freddy, but was immediately interrupted by the handyman and the maid passing out plates as Francine was trying to set out dinner.
Right.
And they were handing around just like these slabs of this strange looking meat that was rather suspicious, to say the least. But Sister Gurel, like, she seemed to be playing along at first despite Francine's disgruntled look, and she began to cut into it. But as we examined the meat a bit closer, we started to pick up on what it actually was. We mentioned that we were looking for where Freddy went, and Kavo is the one who just blurted out that we were looking at him. And at that point, Francine dramatically whipped the tablecloth off the table, sending all the plates and cutlery and meat flying, and revealed under the table a glass case with the remains of Freddy inside of it. And it seemed indeed that Freddy had joined us for dinner, both on top of and underneath the table.
Oh my god, I know what Tim is referencing. I was like, this seems very familiar. I was like, I couldn't point it out, but I was like, Francine? And I was like, wait a minute. Eddie? And I was like, oh shit. Or not Eddie, Frank. I was like, okay, cool. All right. Yeah. I kind of, yeah. I mean, you've watched this movie, right?
I literally watched it yesterday.
Okay. Oh, that's why we're doing it. Yeah, it's the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Fuck. Yeah. No wonder. I was like,
yeah. So Tim had mentioned that it was an inspiration for what was going on in this session, but I had not seen it at the time, and I wanted to see it so I had a frame of reference for when we were recapping the session. I don't know that it made any more sense, so. But I get it.
But yeah, you know, well, I mean, I don't know. It didn't make, well, actually, what happened at the end of the session?
Wow.
I want to know what, yeah.
So at this point, the dancer broke into tears, and Teeks was like, okay, whatever this is over.
Oh yeah, this makes sense. This is definitely just Rocky Horror Picture Show.
And Francine was like, I've grown attached to this plane and what it has to offer. I'm going to continue my work and you're going to be silent. And she tried to control Teeks, but Teeks was like barely able to resist it. I was really struggling with that during this part of the session. The handyman and the maid quickly got up and left the room. Teeks ended up under Francine's control, being forced to sit back down at the table. Calvo was drained from an earlier effect, but he was still able to land an attack on Francine, and then things kind of kicked off as the flesh golem homunculus creature joined the battle as well, making an attack on Bren, who was trying to hold it off so the dancer could get away. And yeah, we ended up in a back and forth fight with Francine and the flesh golem. The succubus Francine was able to create like a draining effect on Finn as well.
Right.
Teeks was kind of like back and forth between, I was really rolling bad on those will saves in this battle. And I ended up having to fire some ice blasts at Bren. But Finn and Calvo were getting in there. They were doing pretty well, especially Finn with that machete. Even the golem actually was pretty tough. It landed a couple of natural 20s on Cavo during the course of the battle. But as things were going on, and it looked like things might be going maybe in our favor a bit, the handyman and the maid reappeared from where the servants had gone, taking these demonic forms, saying to Francine that your mission on the mortal plane is finished and we must return to the abyss.
Oh my god.
And as they sort of like ensnared Francine, one of them said that we will return to the abyss under orders, and Francine was like, I guess it will be good to go home. And then it responded like, you misunderstand, we are returning, you are remaining here in spirit. And then it seemed that the handyman and maid demons were attacking Francine, seeming to kill her at the moment. The golem tried to escape and got itself into the fight. Finn, despite a lengthy debate on how useful it would actually be to do this, Finn seemed a little miffed that these demons stole her kill and tried to attack them, which did not work out very well, as Finn got laid down flat pretty quickly by these other powerful entities, while like Teeks and Bren were trying to defuse the situation. Teeks also doing some healing, which everybody needed. But after Finn went down, and this was something that we learned about Finn's character, after Finn went down, Teeks tried to heal her, but it instead caused more damage. So we just patched her up the best we could, as the demons were telling us that we should leave this place because it will return from where it came. So yeah, we just kind of scuffed the rules a bit, because I'm pretty sure you're supposed to have a feat if you want to use treat wounds on someone who is whatever Finn is. But we were able to at least stabilize her for now. Because like if the healing spell didn't work, then a potion wouldn't have worked either.
Yeah.
We managed to escape out of there with Sister Gorel and an unconscious Finn, trying to make her way back to the boat. And as we had gotten on the boat and it was beginning to leave, we could see on the island there was like this green flash of light as the lighthouse began to disappear.
Yeah.
And I might have missed some of the more dialogue details in there, but you picked up on what this was.
Yeah, I mean, that was basically what the climax was from Rocky Horror Picture Show. I mean, you watched it. It was like, this is exactly what happened. Yeah. Although I didn't realize that Tim Curry played Dr. Frankfurter. So I was like, oh, cool, Tim Curry. Nice. I like Tim Curry a lot.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just saw the movie yesterday and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Nice. I like this little side vignette of just ridiculousness.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty fun. It was pretty silly. I like that it also gave us the opportunity to learn something about Finn that we wouldn't have. Or maybe it would have been super inconvenient to have learned during the middle of a battle. But yeah, it was just like a fun little session. Just a little bit of lightheartedness before we headed into the finale, which I really want to get into, but I'm realizing now should probably be its own episode. Because we're about 45 minutes in, and I don't think that's enough time to cover this whole thing without this being like an hour and a half episode.
It's true. So, yeah, I guess we'll talk about it next time, the finale, because my God, that was very stressful.
Oh yeah. So I guess I'll set it up a bit for people, but the finale did involve us finally catching up with Wyvern, who has been plaguing us for this entire campaign, sometimes in secret, before we even knew who he was. And we managed to catch up with him, and we had to prepare. We actually did prepare a plan, and we... certain things happened that I really want to get into, just like the whole thing of just like coming up with a plan and then just trying to make it work, and certain twisty things that happened, and what this is set up for like next part of the campaign. And we also did some troop combat, and that's a whole thing, and I really want to get into that, and I kind of want to give it more space because that could be a whole episode unto itself.
Yeah.
So this might be a bit of a shorter one this week then.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, just give it the space it deserves, I think. Really excited to...
Unless, Ramon, you have some random topic on your mind.
Nah, I don't know. I'm just kind of surprised that out of all the things, it was Rocky Horror Picture Show. Because I missed that episode. I missed that the session, right? Yeah. So I came back and you guys already did it, and I saw bits and pieces of stuff, and I heard, and so I'm just surprised. Kind of glad and kind of cool. I like the way that Tim kind of translated that into the kind of fantasy setting. It was cool.
Yeah, just like changing the aliens to like demons from another plane, having the house be more like a lighthouse in the middle of this island, so it fit in the setting that we were working with. Yeah, I like those little changes. I kind of wish that I knew more about what was going on before I went into it, because I feel like I would have enjoyed it a bit more, or at the very least, like I would have been able to play along a bit more, I should say. Because for the most part, Teeks was just confused.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, but then, like, all the reveals you would have been like, why is there a dead body in glass?
Oh, true, yeah, that was pretty dramatic.
To be fair, I think that's how, when you watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show the first time, you're like, what is happening?
That's how it's supposed to be. But to be fair, that was one of the things where it was like, oh no, I recognize this scene, and oh, that guy's the mysterious guest. And they're all having this weird meet. Oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah, all we needed was just a criminologist like narrating everything that we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was a really fun session. I really enjoyed it. I do want to get into the finale, but I think we're going to save that. I can't think of anything else. I don't know. I've been trying to do some city building stuff, Ramon. You have anything fun you can say about building cities?
Oh yeah, they're hard.
Yeah,
because the more granular, like it's easy to build a town because there's the important people are like there, right, and they have very specific jobs, like the blacksmith and like the mayor and stuff like that. But when you go to like a city, it's like, holy crap, there's so many people. How do you like who do you like there's so many people who could be important to the players, and it's like, what do you make? I don't know, cities are hard, but I think the advice would be like, wherever your players are gonna go, figure out who runs that place. Like whether it be like actually like somebody who's in charge, like someone who's in like a guard, like a city guard captain or something for that block or something like that, or even if it's like the gang that runs the area, like figure out who's in charge and why. And if new upstarts, because players are always new upstarts, mess around in their territory, they should probably go talk to them or deal with them or see what they're about. Yeah, that'll make a city feel like a city, because there's so many people, like word just gets around, right?
It also, I think, probably would also depend on like the scale of what you're doing, because you might just have someone who isn't like in charge of the whole city, but like this particular block, they know everything that goes on here. This is their business. Everything that happens here has to go through them.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least like if the PCs cause like a ruckus or is trying to like shake up the status quo, or they're just passing through very loudly, like PCs always do. Usually, you know, people like those people are like, hey, what are you doing here? And stop doing that. or hey, what are you doing here? Give me your money.
Yeah, I have a city campaign I'm working on, and I really want to make a map for it, so that's probably something I can get into in the future when I have that in a more finished space.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just build I would just make like wards. I call them wards, right? Just areas defined, and like just kind of think about like what a city, like, you know, like any city needs. Like you need like a place for people to conduct business. You need a place for maybe some manufacturing. You need a place that, you know, can distribute water. You need a place to distribute food. You need a place to collect waste. And like if you could figure all those parts, and you could even maybe put them on different wards, or maybe in different wards they have different areas, or like there's one central area where all that stuff gets done, then yeah, that's how you do it. And then you just think about who's in charge of those responsibilities and who's in charge of the actual physical area. Maybe they might overlap, maybe they might not. So
that is good advice. I will try to keep in mind. I do have like my regions in mind. I'm just trying to like, I wanted to give the players a layout of them, so that's another thing to do.
Yeah, and usually like the nobility are like in charge of that shit, right? Like they might not go do the thing, but they are like in charge of it.
Yeah.
Like it's their responsibility if something goes wrong. So they have like a bunch of underlings that go do that stuff, right? I think if you go like rewatch some of Matt Colville's videos on his I forget his mega city is called, but they have like a bunch of noble houses that are just in charge of like shit. Like it's a port city, so one noble house is in charge of like actually the military, right? Like the naval defense, and one is in charge of like imports, right? Another one might be in charge of magic nonsense, or one major thing could just be like a library, right? Because this is a big major city, like the collection of knowledge and shit like that, right? And they all like are vying for power constantly, and there's like this specific balance of nonsense, and every warder section has like their own warder section guard because it's so big.
Oh yeah.
Right. You don't do something to that scale, but you can definitely have, you know, different police if you want to.
I actually like that idea, and I like the idea of different factions operating at different levels.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a brief conversation. I'm sure we'll get into that a bit more. I'm gonna work on this, and we'll probably be covering that in a future episode. Next episode, we'll probably get into the finale of this campaign because it was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super duper cool and super duper unique, and I'm pretty excited to share that with everybody.
Very stressful, probably among the most stressed I've been in a not streamed game.
True.
And even then, most of that was just pressure from streaming. All right, and if y'all want to hear more about that or anything else we get into, just be sure to hit that subscribe button, do all the YouTube stuff you already know how to do. If you want to see more of our discussions on Pathfinder or Lancer or any other of the tabletop RPGs we've talked about or other campaigns we've talked about, just check out all the previous episodes of the podcast in the podcast playlist. If you want to see some gaming streams, having a whole lot of fun with those, and those are live on Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Definitely check those out. The current stream schedule is Alan Wake on Thursdays, Baldur's Gate 3 on Fridays, and Dead Space 3 on Sunday. So having a lot of fun with those. And actually, I had a lot of fun with the Arkham series as well. So definitely go back and check some of those old episodes out. And check out Outer Worlds, because not enough people watch that. It was really fun. I also want to give some shout outs. If you're into the Lancer RPG, check out all the people we have linked below. We got a whole bunch of third-party Lancer creators and writers linked below. So go check all their cool stuff out. And if you follow us on Twitter, I'm always retweeting any like Lancer Kickstarters I see or come across. So if you want to see more stuff, go check those out. Also want to give a shout out to the Untold Stories Project, where I'm at on Wednesdays now, playing in Freedom League Dark, their superheroes plus magic game, where we're doing some dimension hopping. One of our old players, Kevin, is back playing Overdrive, and he was out for a bit when we started this new campaign, but he's going to be back for the last couple of sessions of this arc. And then they're going to be getting into one-shots and stuff next month, and I've seen the schedule, and it's pretty tight. So definitely go check them out. And also check out their podcast, Heroes of Tomorrow, on all your podcast platforms. But that's all I've got for now. Ramon, anything you want to say before we head off?
Nope.
All right. Well, for all our GMs and players out there who are making a jump to the left and a step to the right, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.